All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me as always, my co-host, oh boy, James Ash. How you doing, brother?
How is everyone doing tonight? I'm doing good, brother.
Tonight's show is going to be a fun one. This is going to be one of those that I'm going to be trying to answer a question that was sent to me, if that makes sense. Several people have asked us to look into this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you this thing. It's I guess you would call it a post. It's something that somebody has written and it's gotten spread around a lot. And supposedly people are saying this is true and they are asking us to look into it and see if it is true. So I have done so and I will tell you about that tonight on the show. So this has to do with Freddy Krueger. One of my favorite horror movies of all time is Nightmare on Elm Street. Great flick. And this has to do with the origin of Freddy Krueger and if it's based on a real-life serial killer or not. So I'm going to read you the post that was sent to me, and then I'll give you a little bit more detail on it and what I found, and we'll discuss it. So the original post says that the horror film character Freddy Krueger was based on a real-life serial killer who lived in Lightning Creek, Oklahoma in the 1800s. Later, the town was moved and became Alloway, Oklahoma. When Uluga Lake was built in the 1950s and 60s, the town was moved again. According to court county records of the time, Frederick Kruger was known to have killed at least 20 children within a 3-mile radius of where he lived. He reportedly murdered most of the children using only a gardening claw. He lived inside an old abandoned cement factory north of town, where he would bring his victims. Having set up a small living space and torture area within the mechanical room of the facility. Oh yeah, back then, a mechanical room was also known as a boiler room. Mr. Kruger was eventually caught by his own recourse by accidentally starting a fire in a portion of the factory, where he burned over 70% of his body. While in the hospital recovering, police investigated and he was arrested after they found his room of horrors. He was tried but found to be criminally insane. He spent the rest of his life in a psychiatric hospital in Veneta, Oklahoma, before dying in his sleep at the old age of 72. But shortly after his death, a string of unexpected deaths occurred, involving young teenagers and children while they're sleeping in their beds. Before they died, a few parents said their children would wake up in the middle of the night from the night terrors to what they called a burned and scary old man with a claw that was trying to kill them, and they refused to go back to sleep. We now know why. To this day, and long before the Elm Street films, Lightning Creek and Old Alloway, Oklahoma, has since become ghost towns where all residents have long moved away in fear that it was haunted by his ghost. And they include a picture here that has, it's like an old-timey looking picture in black and white. It's designed to look like it's from the 1800s, and it has 3 little bitty toddler-like children. One that looks to be 3 or 4 years old, and the other 2 look to be 1 or 2 years old. And they are sitting in a rocking chair. The little one that is older is standing beside it. And right behind them is a dude that looks like Freddy Krueger. And this is supposedly a picture of Frederick Kruger. So that is the post that was sent to me. So I started looking into it. I was also sent a gravestone that says Frederick Kruger, 1838 to 1910. It was a picture of it. And this was supposedly proof that this guy lived and all of that. So I looked into this and I couldn't find any records of a Frederick Krueger in Oklahoma. I couldn't find any articles about a guy murdering kids and then dying in a fire there. None of that stuff. So basically, what I did find was a lot of different versions of this exact same post. In some of them, the place is Cincinnati, Ohio, instead of Oklahoma. In other places, it's Brooklyn, New York, in other posts. So there's a bunch of different versions of this that have a bunch of different towns put in as the location. So that's my first clue when I started looking into this, that this probably isn't true. So there's that. There is no record that I could find of Frederick Krueger. Now, I did find the gravestone that says Frederick Krueger, 1838 to 1910. But unfortunately, the origin of that picture actually comes from a fake post that somebody made for Halloween. And at the end of that post, it said, actually, I just found this picture and made all this stuff up, and you actually read it. Happy October, everyone. Except for it doesn't say stuff, it says a different word that starts with S. So, from what I can find, completely false, made up. This did not happen. There is no record of the guy killing anybody in Oklahoma, in Cincinnati, Ohio, in Brooklyn, anywhere I could find. Never happened. There is no record of a Frederick Krueger that was put in a mental institution instead of being found guilty of murder of children. No record of it. So then we're going to try to figure out, if that is not the origin, what is? Did Wes Craven, the guy who wrote the movie, did he ever say what the origin of Freddy Krueger was? Because if there was an actual serial killer named Frederick Krueger that all this stuff is based on, then I'm pretty sure Wes Craven would have talked about that in an interview. So I started looking around different interviews that Wes Craven had done about the Nightmare on Elm Street films, the first one in particular, but any of them really, to see if he ever talked about where he got the idea for the movies, if he ever talked about a serial killer that it was based on or anything like that. So it turns out that Wes Craven indeed did tell everybody about where he got the idea for Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. In one interview he did, he talked about an old news story that he had read. And the news story was about a family that was trying to get their life together because they had escaped Cambodia. And apparently whatever they had seen and experienced in Cambodia was pretty off the charts crazy and scary, because the son had PTSD. He was really, really messed up from all the trauma. And eventually he died. He died in his sleep while having nightmares. This gave Wes Craven the idea of a killer that would get you in your dreams. That's where he got that idea. The article that he read was in the LA Times. I'm going to read you the actual quote from Wes Craven. I think that'll be the easiest way to do this. Quote, I'd read an article in the LA Times about a family who had escaped the killing fields in Cambodia and managed to get to the U.S. Things were fine, and then suddenly the young son was having very disturbing nightmares. He told his parents he was afraid that if he slept, the thing chasing him would get him. So he tried to stay awake for days at a time. When he finally fell asleep, his parents thought that the crisis was over. Then they heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. He died in the middle of the nightmare. That is what was the basis of the idea of Nightmare on Elm Street. Now that comes from Wes Craven himself in an interview. He also talked about the name Frederick Krueger, where he got the name Freddy Krueger. He talked about that being named after a bully from his own life. He said that as a kid, he was once in his home, and he was sitting there, and this creepy old man was walking down the path beside the window. And the man stopped at his window and looked in at him, and it scared the hell out of him. So that's the idea where he kind of got the way that Freddy was going to look, was from that old man. But he said that he had a childhood bully who was named Fred Krueger. That was the name of the bully. And that is where he got the name Freddy Krueger from, because this bully apparently terrorized him growing up, would beat the hell out of him and scare the hell out of him all the time. So he named Freddy Krueger after Fred Krueger, who was the bully that picked on him when he was young. And he also said that that's where one of the names from the villain in Last House of the Left comes from as well, which is named Krug or Krug. I don't know which one. I haven't seen the movie. But that is supposedly also named after that bully, Fred Krueger, that picked on him. So that's kind of where it comes from. He said that the burnt part comes from because he was trying to figure out how to make the killer look scary. And he said a lot of killers in movies use masks, and he didn't want to use a mask because he thought it had been done too much. So he decided that he was going to make him terrifying by scarring his skin instead of giving him a mask. And that's where the idea for him burning up and being all burnt and scarred came from. So there you have it. There is where the origin story of Freddy Krueger comes from. That's where he got the idea. There is no record that I could find anywhere of a serial killer that killed children with a gardening plow or a gardening hook or whatever it's called, named Fred Krueger, Frederick Kruger, anything like it, that was put in an insane asylum. From everything I can find, this post is one of those things that kind of somebody makes up as a joke, and it gets copied and shared over and over and over again, and people change it a little bit. It's like that old game of telephone where you whisper into someone's ear a message, and the message changes as it goes down the line. That's kind of what happened with this. The date changed a little bit, the place changed a little bit in each version. The details remained basically the same, but as far as I can find from looking into it, that is the answer to that question. Freddy Krueger was not based on a serial killer that existed in real life. He was based on a bully of Wes Craven when he was growing up, and a guy that scared him by looking in his window. That's what was the basis. The storyline of Nightmare on Elm Street, the idea of the killer that gets you in your dreams, came from that Cambodian family. The news story that he read in the LA Times about that Cambodian family whose son died in his sleep. That is the origin of the story. That is the origin of the character. And it is not from a serial killer. So with that being said, I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and get his thoughts on this and anything that he wants to share.
This one, I just, like James says, that's pretty much what it is. I'm a big horror movie fan. I've never really been a big fan, guys, and this is probably going to make some people mad, of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I don't hate it. I just never cared for it. I just never cared. He was a child murderer. Freddy was funny. I like Robert Englund. The remakes, horror, I won't even speak of it because it was garbage. Was always a cool, funny, he did some funny stuff. I was more of a Jason fan. I mean, I like Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm more of an Evil Dead, Evil Ash, you know who the Ash is, guys. Evil Dead movies. That's my favorite movies, but Nightmare on Elm Street's always been pretty cool. This is a good one, though. I mean, it's kind of funny. No, it was never, I've heard this rumor before. It never was ever some killer. It was this bully. I've read this one before, because this wasn't the first time I've heard about this. It's a couple times I've read about something about this, and that's all it was. It was a good story. I mean, there's a little bit of, I guess the bully part was, he got picked on all the time. Maybe the bully did some really nasty stuff to him, but, to make a movie about him, he probably did. And just push him around. He probably did some really bad things. So you never know. It was always a good story. I know you guys probably seen, I've seen them all, even the garbage remake. And I always thought they were funny. It's just kind of corny. And, Freddy would make some crazy stuff and say some crazy things and come out, and people would fall asleep and they would be very powerful, but he would be more powerful and he'd kill them, and then he'd come back. Every time he'd come back, except Jason versus Freddy, he got his ass kicked, and I love that movie because he, at the end he lost. I guess they made you guys ever see, I'm not trying to get off the subject, we are talking about Freddy. They made a deleted, I have the copy of it, they made the deleted alternate ending where Freddy actually won, but people didn't like it, so they went to the Jason winning. And they also made Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, the comic book. They were going to make the movie, but they wanted Ash to win, and they didn't want to do that. And there was a big argument with the makers from Friday the 13th. But in the comic book, I don't know, Freddy disappeared, Jason took off, and Ash, it was like a draw. It was kind of weird. Guys, check that book out. I think you could buy it like on eBay if you guys can find it. It was a couple, like 10 years ago, maybe even longer. It's been a while. It was a cool comic book. I read it online. You can see it on YouTube. I think somebody made copies of it and actually narrated it. And I think you could do that with almost every comic book. Freddy, this was a cool one, guys. I don't know if I really know much about this other than, what I've seen on the movies. You guys can write in the comments what you guys think, or you guys can keep on looking and find more information for this one, because this one was pretty weird because I saw it and I'm like, man, really? I know some horror movies have base truth to it. This one doesn't. I know it's after somebody. The whole Exorcist, we know that was off of a true story. It was a boy, it wasn't a girl. But that's why they made it, because it was a movie, so they had to make it opposite. Amityville Horror was off of a true story. A couple other ones were supposed to be off of true stories, but those are the two most popular ones, guys. I think even Psycho was off of something. I don't remember. I know it was written by him, but I think it was off of some kind of story a long time ago. I don't know if it's fact, but I read something before that was off of a true killing. So I don't know. You guys can check that one out. Blair Witch was off of the Bell Witch. I know that one. I forgot about that one. You guys, that's a show we need to do. The Bell Witch, aka the Blair Witch. They did a couple movies now. But that was also off of a real witch. So I don't know if you guys read the story about that. That's one you guys got to check out. All these other ones, yeah, like Jason, one of my favorites, because it's not that I like Jason. It's just that I can't really say nothing because we're on the radio, but a lot of stuff, you guys seen those movies. They're just really corny in the 80s, and just a lot of stuff happens, Just the way he kills people just made me laugh. And he's just this big 6'6" guy walking around 280 pounds in a ski mask, and it's so funny. Like, you'll see people running away, and like he always gets them. It doesn't matter where they go; he always finds them. They could climb a 700-foot tree and he'd be there. It's just like Michael Myers, guys. You know how that one goes too. And the funny thing about Michael Myers, a lot of people don't realize how the mask started. They got a mask of William Shatner, and then they painted it white or something, and they melted it. But originally it was like a mask of me, William Shatner. So that's a funny thing you guys need to look up. You guys will laugh about that one. That's where they got that mask. That was a funny one. But yeah, it's the same thing. Michael Myers, he'd run away, and you could jump in a Mustang, drive 185 miles away, and he'd still be there. Like, as soon as you hop out of the car, he'd kill you. It's just like Jason versus Freddy. That's why I love those movies. I mean, I love Freddy too. That was always cool. He was one of a kind because Robert Englund just played, like, he's a great actor anyway, but like he made that character, and the way he would talk crap to people before he kill them, and he just made all kinds of stupid remarks. And it even made when Jason versus Freddy, that was funny because he made fun of Jason all the time. Just out there, comic horror gore, just great actor. And he just, I like Wes Craven's always been a great writer anyway. Look at all the books he's writing and movies he's directed. So it was a great character. The first one was good. And then they made the second one was bad. Third one was bad. Fourth one was all right. The third one was cool, whatever. Fifth one, the sixth one, then Craven came back and made the New Nightmare. And it was all right. Then Jason versus Freddy, and then they made the remake, and I was like, God. I'm not a fan of remakes anyway. Like, there's only a few I like. And I don't want to get this as a horror movie, but like I said, we just pretty much, James, again, 90% of the time, James finds out stuff, and like I'll come on and I'll maybe find a little bit more, and I'll just talk about my opinions. But this one was cool because we got it was a myth that some people are actually believing, and they think this is really true. And I know somebody's, it was true. I read it from the internet, from, this site, and this said, like I said, please, James probably studied this, and I studied a little bit about it. I've already heard about it anyway. And I know James looked this up and tried to look for this. And he probably didn't find really nothing other than it was probably what he just said, the story. And I've already heard this because I've heard I think I watched a documentary about the Nightmare on Elm Street story, how it came to. And I remember now Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that was one, it was made after Ed Gein. Ed Gein, Silence of the Lambs, I heard that's supposed to be off of a killer. The Wrong Turn was off of a real family that was there. I remember that was turned into cannibals. I knew that was off of a horror, real true story, and some other ones. Those are some other ones you guys want to check out. We love horror movies too, so we could talk about it. This is being on Staring into the Abyss. We can get away with all this stuff. You guys want to check out the movie? Let's go watch Nightmare on Elm Street. Go watch a series one night. If you guys, on a Saturday night or Friday night, you guys got the day off or the weekend off, check them all out. Watch them. Start them in the morning or whatever, and check them out. But just find out what you think. Maybe you guys can find out some more research on this, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe there's something else about this that we can find out we don't know. And it would be great if you guys can comment or instant message us or, email us. You know where to go, guys. And we would really want to know what you guys think, and leave some comments when you listen to the show. So this was a cool show. It was something different. Wasn't really too hard. We did a show last week with somebody that did the calling, Jerry. He's a really cool guy. But this one was a cool little one. I have nothing really too much to say. There wasn't really much research on this one, and James already pretty much got it. But I wanted to bring up a little bit of the Freddy Krueger thing and what you guys think. But there you go, James. That's pretty much it. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I want to get into the Texas Chainsaw thing a minute, because that, to me, is probably the most famous example of exactly what's happening with the Nightmare on Elm Street myth. Because when Texas Chainsaw came out, they actually marketed that movie as being based on a true story, like inspired by true events. And everybody thought, oh my God, this was a true story, man. This is crazy. There was some crazy people with chainsaws that were cutting up people and making chili out of them and all this. And that is literally what people thought. And then come to find out that the reason they say it's inspired by true events is because it was loosely based on the serial killer Ed Gein, who was a real sick dude. He would kill people and make lampshades out of their skin and all kinds of stuff. Ed Gein is a trip. If you ever want to research a serial killer that is absolutely out there, Ed Gein is the man when it comes to that. Because there's so many that were based on Ed Gein. I think that Psycho was based on Ed Gein as well, I believe. Because Ed Gein had this weird thing with his mom, where he would dress up in women's clothing and stuff as well. Ed Gein was a real sicko. So there was multiple. I even think Silence of the Lambs might have been based in part on Ed Gein as well because of the cannibalism. But that's where they got that for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where they could say it was inspired by true events because they could loosely base it on some of the stuff Ed Gein did. But there was no family of chainsaw killers that were killing people and making chili. That didn't ever happen. But people believed it happened. Now, to this day, as of right now, when we are doing this show, there are still people who will argue till they're blue in the face with you that actually happened. That the Texas Chainsaw Massacre actually happened. And they'll say, dude, I'm telling you, I lived in Texas back. I had a cousin or an uncle that lived in Texas during the 70s, and they told me that it was in their town, and they saw the newspaper reports about the family and all this stuff, right? It's all nonsense. People like to pretend that they know things or that they are things that they are not. You will have that every single time you have one of these kind of stories where somebody says, hey man, this is based on this. It actually happened. And then you look it up and it didn't actually happen. And you can prove that it did not actually happen. You can literally show, okay, look, there's no record of it anywhere. And you can show the person that made the damn movie saying that that's not what happened. That he based it on this, not that. But you'll still have those same people that will argue with you. and tell you that it's true. You're going to have that. But I'm telling you, this is not true. The Nightmare on Elm Street thing is not true. There was no serial killer that killed children with a garden thing. Never happened. There was no family running around Texas with chainsaws, cutting people up and making chili out of. That didn't happen either. That was based on Ed Gein. That is something that almost always happens with the horror genre, more than any other genre. Because people get scared by horror movies, and they say, okay, what would make this even scarier if people thought it was true? Because yes, Freddy Krueger is scary, or Jason is scary, or Michael Myers is scary. But if you thought that this was based on an actual killer, that would be even scarier. Because to think somebody actually did that, man, that's a lot scarier. And then sometimes they'll even up the ante even more, to where they'll say, not only is this based on a true story, but the killer was never caught. All of a sudden, the killing stopped, and nobody ever knew who did it. So somewhere out there is still the killer. They do that a lot too. Now, once in a while, that's actually true. Once in a while, you will have a serial killer who kills for a while. And then all of a sudden, the killings stop. And you never hear nothing from him again. But they never catch the dude. Probably the most famous example of that is Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper terrorized London. Hell, he really terrorized all of England for a while. And then all of a sudden, just disappeared. Now, there are a lot of different theories on who Jack the Ripper was. We've done multiple shows where we talk about Jack the Ripper. We go into great detail of all the murders, the case, different suspects, what we think if they are, they aren't. There's talk that H.H. Holmes could have been Jack the Ripper because he was over there during that time and then came back here, and maybe that's why the murder stopped. All kinds of different theories. I'm not going to go through them all. I'm not going to talk about all that because we've done that over and over and over again on other shows. So feel free to go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/James Hershey Jr., and check out all the different Jack the Ripper shows if you're interested in that. They're really good. You'll like them. But that's the best and the most famous example of that happening, where you had a serial killer who stopped killing and disappeared. And nobody knows why. They don't know if he just moved on to another area and started killing there and started doing things differently so that it didn't appear to be the same killer. They don't know if the serial killer just died. Maybe he got in a car wreck or something like that. And that is why you no longer have those murders taking place. They don't know what happened. You have that happen sometimes. There was another one that was in recent times, but I can't quite remember. I think it might be the Zodiac Killer or something like that. It's one of those that was killing and leaving clues and kind of taunting the police, and then all of a sudden just stopped. And they never caught the dude. Nobody knows who the hell he was. They never even got close to catching him. But he just killed some people, and then he left a lot of clues and taunted the police, and then just stopped. And nobody knows whether he is dead or moved on or what has happened to him. So those are a couple of different examples of exactly what I'm talking about, where you have that happen a lot in horror movies, where they kind of hype things up to make you think, oh man, this is so scary. This is going to be the scariest thing. You see that all the time too now. Every new horror movie that comes out, you'll see all over Facebook and all over the different advertisements that people are saying that it is the scariest horror movie they've ever seen, and so scary that people can't even finish watching it, and all that kind of nonsense. It's all hype, because almost all the time when you actually watch the thing, it's garbage. And that's the truth about horror movies that a lot of horror fans won't tell you. The honest to God truth about horror movies is the overwhelming majority of them are crap. Absolute crap. They're horrible movies. They're not well made. They don't have good acting. They don't have good special effects. Most of them really suck. But people like getting scared. And they form some kind of weird fixation and fascination with these characters to where in their mind the movies are way better than they actually are. And I'm no different. I'm not putting myself above all the horror fans here. I'm the exact same way. I'll give you a great example. I have very fond memories of the Friday the 13th movies. When the game came out, the Friday the 13th, the game for Xbox One, when that came out, I bought that sucker right away because I love horror games, first of all. I'll buy every single one. So I bought it, and I played it. Now, there was a lot of issues with that game, a lot of bugs, all that kind of stuff, but this isn't about the video game necessarily. It's the larger point I'm trying to make. People love that game. They love that character of Jason Voorhees. Playing that game made me want to go back and watch all of the movies again. So that's exactly what I decided to do one day. One weekend, me and my beautiful wife decided that we were going to sit down and watch the entire Friday the 13th series again. And we were so excited, man. We were hyped up because in both of our minds, we thought this is one of the greatest horror series ever made. You know, we had these amazing feelings inside about how great Jason was and what a great movie we were going to get ready to see again. And so we sit down and we watch them. We start with the very first Friday the 13th and we work our way all the way through, all the way up to the remake thing they did, the 2009 movie. It's not really a remake. It's kind of a, I don't know what the hell it is. It's just a different movie. It had the guy from Supernatural, Jared Padalecki or whatever the hell, Tonsilhockey, whatever that dude's name is. It had him in it. And he was amazing in the movie. He's an unbelievable actor. I don't mean to make fun of him. He's awesome. And that movie is actually one of my all-time favorite, not only Friday the 13th movies, but just horror movies in general. It's a great movie. We watched the entire series. And one thing I noticed as we went through, and I looked at my wife and I said out loud, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" Because it seems to me that, and I hate to say this, but it seems to me that these movies kind of suck. I don't understand. I remember these being so cool. I love these movies so much. I don't understand why they're garbage now. Why do I watch them now and I'm like, what the hell am I watching? This is terrible. And another weird thing is I remember all these epic kills. I remember all these amazing kills that Jason had, where he would kill the counselors in all these crazy ways, and it was so awesome. But I realized as I rewatched the entire series that the majority of the kills aren't even actually shown. Like the actual kill isn't shown. You'll see Jason, and you'll hear the or whatever as he stabs them, and then you'll see them with the thing sticking to him at the end or whatever, but a lot of that is kind of implied, and your mind just kind of fills in the blank. It's very, very weird. If you get the chance, rewatch some of these old series, and you'll notice that they're nothing like you remember them. Like in your mind, you build these things up into like legendary status, and they're so amazing, but when you go back and watch them again, they're really not all that good. And that's a very strange thing. But that's my thoughts on the reasoning behind why a lot of times they'll try to claim it's a true story or based on true events or whatever. I think it's all hype. It's all meant to make the movie seem a lot scarier than it actually is. So I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy and get his opinion on that.
Yeah, they do that to sell the movie. Because think about it, it's a marketing genius idea. You tell people that this is based off of a real story or something happened like this, people are going to go see it. It's shock value. Who wouldn't want to see that? I mean, that's why people go see horror movies, if you think about it anyway, to see something that deep down inside of us we like. That's what they say. Some people, this is how they get, a lot of their frustrations out of stuff they, deep down inside, this is a part of them that they like to see this kind of stuff, because horror movies are very popular genre. So that's what and then they sell it. They'll say, well, like originally, like with I think was it the Blair Witch when it first came out. I'll tell you a story about this. Funny. They were, oh yeah, this is a true story and this and that, and they got in trouble a week later and had to change it. It was inspired by a true story, the Bell Witch, but the movie itself was not true. It was all fake. The actors are still alive. People. And I remember when I first went inside, I was just turned 21, and I was in Pennsylvania at the time, maybe about 2 hours away from Bell Mountain. And I remember I saw this movie, and I had to go home, and I was by myself, and my aunt lived in a house that was over 100-something years old, so it looked like an old scary house at night. And they lived in the forest area. I remember they had an attic. I mean, they had a cellar downstairs, and they had a little room they had found in it, and they never knew about it for years. I guess for 50 years it was sealed away, and it was kind of weird. But when I was in that house, I guess my grandmother had passed away, my great-grandmother, I think it was, and I felt something was in that house. That house was just, something was watching me all the time. They had this weirdo doll in the room next to me where I was staying. I didn't like it there. I just be straight up with you guys. I did not like staying there. It was just a weird feeling. And like 2 days later, they're all, you gonna want to go to like my cousin had a house, what do they call those? Back east, they have getaway houses like on the lake. We had one in Erie, Pennsylvania. We had like this my grandparents had like this lake house, and it was cool. It was like a little trailer, but it was like a house. It was really weird. And we used to stay out there for a week or two with them. And that's what it was like that. They had like these little houses and stuff like that, and you could go there, and to the point was that's what they do out there. And they wanted to go to Maryland, like maybe 20 miles away from Bell Mountain. And I'm like, no, I'm cool after seeing that movie. Because at first they said it was real. Then they had to change it. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to go. Not if that's true. I'm not going to go by there. That was back when I was a little bit different person then. I've changed a lot. I've had a lot of bad things happen in my life, and a lot of things happening since then. And I was always a pretty tough dude anyway, but yeah, I was like, nah, not if that really happened. I found it didn't, but it was kind of creepy out there, guys. Like, when I saw that little room they had down there, and they finally figured it out, and it was kind of weird. I'm like, why would you have an extra room in your cellar? It's just kind of weird to me, dude. Like, and there's just a lot of stuff that's happened in Pennsylvania, back east, anywhere in those areas. A lot of witch stuff with witches and murdering, and just a lot of stuff that's happened. Like here up here in California, I want to do a show because they're talking about a lot of satanic rituals happening up in San Bernardino Mountains, and it does. A lot of stuff is going on, and people are missing and stuff. And maybe we could do a show later on about this. This is another one that's opened up to another show. But we have our own stuff here in the high desert for years, and it happens. But back there, yeah, there's a lot of stuff back there, guys. Indiana, Ohio has a lot of things. Even Pennsylvania, Virginia, where James lives, West Virginia has a lot of history. New York, Rhode Island, all kinds of weird stuff goes on there. in the back in the day. A lot of people were murdered for things that shouldn't have happened. The Bunny Man's out there. Just throwing out names out there. A lot of insane asylums in Pennsylvania had a lot of bad things happen, murders. Just and I think what happens back east, why in like Maine and stuff like that, is it's so cold sometimes, just like Canada too, in the Antarctica, and like Antarctica and Alaska, it's so cold for months on end, where they have to sit in the house, and I think people lose it after a while. Back then, especially hundreds of years ago, and I think I think people just got bored, and it happens today, and I just think people lost their mind and they just do crazy things. But that's pretty much all I got to say. If you guys want to check that movie out, do the same thing. Make yourself have a horror night or a horror weekend or something, you guys, and check out all these movies we're talking about. But yeah, so that's all pretty much, James. You can go ahead, brother.
It's kind of funny because, like I said earlier in the show, that the overwhelming majority of horror movies are crap. Now, I meant that, but we all know that, and we watch them anyway. That's the funny thing. That's the thing that's so strange and so beautiful about horror fans. If you're a person that loves horror movies, you're not watching those horror movies because they have Oscar-winning performances in them. You're not watching those horror movies because they have the biggest name actors giving these amazing portrayals of these really deep and well-written characters. That's not what you're there for. You're there for a body count. You're there for fun. And one thing horror movies are is fun. Now you might think, wait a minute, that you're talking crazy. A horror movie is scary as hell. It's about people being murdered. How is that fun? Well, people that are horror fans are a special breed of person. They are people that will watch a movie about somebody chopping people to bits with an axe and cheer for the killer. Every time somebody dies, they applaud. They get giddy. They like to watch the kills. They like to watch the cool ways that the killer will destroy the victim. Now that sounds out of context horrible. But keep in mind, what we're watching on the screen is not real. It is a movie. In the same way that what makes a good comedy is the exaggeration of the joke. That's why a joke is funny, because of the exaggeration. When you hear a good joke or you see a good comedy, it's usually rather ridiculous. And the reason why you think it's so funny is because it's so ridiculous. Because there's such an exaggeration there from reality. It's the exact same thing with horror movies, because laughter and fear are not that far apart. They're both base emotions, and they're both primal emotions. Because you can feel fear and get scared with no thought. You walk around the corner, somebody jumps out, boo, scares you. You feel fear. You might scream because you're startled. That doesn't require conscious thought. That doesn't require you to make the decision to be afraid. The same exact thing is true with comedy. It's the exact same thing. You're walking down the street in the winter. You see somebody walking on the sidewalk across the street. They slip and fall down and roll down the hill. Now, it's not the kind of fall that breaks their neck or anything crazy where there's a horrible injury. It's just a fall and a roll down the hill. And maybe it's an old fat guy who falls, bounces, rolls down the hill, and curses every time he rolls over. Something like that. Your instinct right away is to laugh because that's funny. Now, you don't stop and think about why it's funny. You don't stop and make the conscious decision to laugh. It's just funny. There are a lot of things like that. Whatever your thing is, whether it's slip and falls or whether it, a lot of people like fart jokes. And they think it's hilarious when somebody passes gas in a room. Whatever that thing is that makes you laugh. It's just funny. It doesn't require you to sit there and think about it. When you watch a comedy on TV, when they tell a joke or there's some kind of gag done that is funny, you don't sit there and think about it and analyze it and figure out why it's funny. You just laugh because it's funny. Your mind subconsciously can do all that without you having to think about it. So when a horror fan watches a horror movie and is excited by the cool kills that happen, they understand watching it that it's not real. That's not reality. It's an exaggeration of reality. And that's what makes it enjoyable. Because everybody likes to be afraid in a safe environment. That's why roller coasters are popular. That's why haunted houses are popular. Because it's a way to experience that fear in a safe and controlled manner where you know you're not really going to be hurt. Horror movies provide that exact experience. You are able to watch something on the screen, whether you go to the movie theater or you watch it at your house, that elicits those same feelings inside of you. That same rush and exhilaration of fear and then relief when you're okay. From a completely safe distance. You are in absolutely no danger when you're watching a horror movie. But you still go through those emotions. That is the attractant to horror movies. People like that. So when somebody is way into horror movies and that is their favorite thing, it's not necessarily because that person is a sick-minded person that's going to hurt somebody someday. They're not crazy. They're not deadly. They're not murderous. They're just adrenaline junkies. They like that rush of being scared, but knowing they're okay. That's cool to them. People that don't watch horror movies don't understand that rush. Like my mother hates horror. She cannot stand scary movies at all. If she hears the theme to Halloween, she has nightmares for weeks. It's funny because I wrote 4 extremely scary horror novels. These are next level frightening. Now, my mother wanted to support me because I am her son and she loves me. So she read the first novel I ever put out, which was I Am Legion. And she had some very unmother-like words to say to me after she finished it. She was not happy with me because I scared the ever-loving hell out of her with that book. To this day, she still has nightmares about that novel. It was funny because she told me that after she read the first page, she wanted to stop. She wanted to quit reading it because it was already scaring the hell out of her. But she couldn't put it down. She had to know what happened next. And it pissed her off that she couldn't stop reading it, even though she wanted desperately to stop reading it. So somebody like her does not understand the rush and the thrill that a horror fan gets from watching one of those movies. They'll just never understand it. But I assure you, those people that love those movies are not dangerous in any way. The majority of them. Now, you have some people that are just sickos. But those people are still going to be sickos if they watch nothing but Food Network. They're still going to be crazy. And they're still going to hurt people. I don't think it has anything to do with the movie itself. So we've kind of really run the gauntlet here on a bunch of different topics on this show. We started off talking about the origin of Freddy Krueger and whether or not it was based on a real serial killer. Because we had a couple listeners that sent that in to us and wanted to know if it was true. So we answered that question, and we've got a chance in this episode to talk about horror movies and some of our favorite characters and all that kind of stuff. So before I throw it back over to Old Boy for his final sum up and shout out and all that, I'd like to say to you listening, if you are somebody that is into horror movies, then go to the YouTube channel, to the video of this show. If you're listening on the radio, go to the channel. If you're listening on YouTube, you're already there. You're already watching the video. Down in the comments section, let us know what some of your favorite horror movies and horror characters are. I'd really like to see what everybody has to say about it. Because I bet that a lot of us have a lot of the same favorites. And one other thing that always happens when you do this, whenever you ask people to name their favorite horror movies and stuff, you always end up with a couple that are really kind of out of the box that you never would have even thought of. I've actually seen a couple on lists that I've never even heard of before. And I went and watched because I'd never heard of them. And some of them were actually pretty good. So down in the comments section of this video, let me know what some of your favorite horror movies are. And some of the ones that you thought were the best. And we'll kind of go back and forth, all of us horror fans together, and kind of make a list. And if you haven't seen some of the cool movies that other people are saying are so good, then you can go check them out. That'll kind of be something we can all do together. It might be a little bit of fun. But with that being said, I'm going to throw back over to Old Boy for his shout-outs, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Thank you, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. It was a little bit different than usual. Yeah, let us know what horror movies are your favorite. Mine is the Evil Dead series. It's my favorite of all time. And I love the original Halloween movie. And I have plenty of other ones, but we can get to those. Maybe I'll make a list later and you guys will see it. I love the Lost Boy movie, one of my favorites. So, that being said, thank you guys from Parax Radio for listening to us every Sunday night, early Monday morning if you're on the East Coast, 9 o'clock Pacific time, my time. Sunday nights, technically. It's kind of funny. If you guys want to get any merchandise, check out our show. If you guys want any merchandise, check out our store. He'll tell you where to go. We're just added Staring Into the Abyss mask, guys, and you can pick one up. He'll tell you how much they are and where to get them at. And you can get shirts and blankets and all kinds of cool stuff. I hope you guys have a good night. I love you guys. Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Monster Hunters, and Demon Lovers. I love you. Blessed be. And just forgot one thing. If you want to watch our old shows or the new ones, go to James Hersey's YouTube page and subscribe. You guys have a good night.
My favorites are the Nightmare on Elm Street series. I love that whole series. I love Freddy Krueger. I think it's a great character. I like the fact that they kind of went away from the original backstory of Freddy. In the original backstory, he was kind of a pedophile, and they kind of shied away from that in the movies, which is awesome. Not that he's a pedophile is not awesome. That sucks. It's awesome that they kind of went away from that and didn't focus on that and made him something else. In the later movies, they made him funny. The first one was scary. The rest of them were kind of funny. I like funny Freddy. Scary Freddy is all right, but funny Freddy's much better. I also love the Friday the 13th and the Halloween series. Both of those are a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of the original Wrong Turn movie. I think that's one great horror movie that gets overlooked by a lot of people. And another one I really enjoy watching, believe it or not, is the Jeepers Creepers movies. The reason I love those movies so much is not necessarily because of the movies, but because my wife absolutely loves those movies. And it brings me a lot of joy to see her eyes light up when we watch them. She just loves them for some reason. So I actually enjoy watching them, not because I really like those movies, but I like to watch her watch those movies, if that makes sense. But that's my list. As Old Boy mentioned, we now are carrying masks on the website. The reason we did that is because we had the opportunity to get them made, and we were able to tie in with the charity. So the cool thing about the masks, if you buy them, they are $10.99 on the site on teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. You can pick them up there. They're kind of really cool. They have the Staring Eye logo on them, and they're black. They're also come in a couple different colors, but I think the black looks the best. They're $10.99 a piece, and I marked the price down because the original price that they wanted me to sell them at was like $15, and I just thought $15 is a little much for a mask, so I marked it down to $10.99. But whatever our profit is on that, it's like a buck or two or whatever, that is going to be donated to feed hungry children in America. So there's a couple different charities that they have worked out with Teespring that will be getting that money. So if you guys want to show support for the show and you want some staring merch and you want to also have a mask that's kind of cool looking to wear, if you're in an area that they're making you wear a mask to do things, you can put this staring mask on. It qualifies. It will enable you to go into stores and all that stuff, and you can support the show, but also at the same time, the money that we would be making off of those masks are going to be going to feed hungry children, which is a great, great thing. So this is your chance to support the show, help out some kids, and also get something that looks kind of cool out of the deal. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank you for all your support and all the love that you give us. And until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.